This happened around 2010 when I was still a kid. We lived in a small house surrounded by trees, a place that felt tucked away but was only a few minutes from town. It was me, my mom, my dad, my cousin, my aunt, and her husband all under the same roof. Most of the days were pretty ordinary. My cousin and I were usually watched by my mom while everybody else went to work. The air always smelled like pine and deer would wander through the yard pretty much daily. The three of us spent a lot of time in the house alone, the kind of home that seemed peaceful by day and a little eerie by night. We had only one neighbor, an older man who mostly kept to himself, and at that age, I didn't think twice about being isolated. It was just a normal life. Bugs, animals, big storms, it was all routine. The strange thing about what happened that day is that everybody remembers it clearly, yet none of us remember it the same way. In my version, my mom was doing my hair. She loved to braid it every morning. I was wearing a plain white t-shirt, sitting still while she worked her fingers through my hair when everything in the room suddenly goes red. At first, I assumed I was imagining it, but the light got stronger until it filled every corner. I remember the walls glowing, the floorboards picking up the color like blood-tinted glass. It wasn't a sunset, way too fast and bright. I looked up from my lap and the whole world felt slow, as if time itself had paused, and I couldn't even hear my heartbeat. The windows in front of me were uncovered. The light came straight through them, thick and steady, almost humming in a way that I could feel in my teeth. I glanced up toward my mom, expecting her to move, but she was frozen, mid-gesture, eyes wide. My cousin had backed into the far corner of the room and was staring toward the ceiling. For a moment, I really thought everything outside must be burning, but there was no smoke. The air didn't even feel warm. It was just red, pure red, with no shadows, no shapes, and no sounds. Then it vanished. One blink, it's there. Next, it's gone. Time seemed to slam back to normal speed. The sound of the clock returned, and I could hear birds again. I remember standing there shaking and asked my mom what that was. She stared at the window for a few moments before finally saying that she didn't know. Her version doesn't match mine. She said that she wasn't doing my hair at all. She'd been helping me with homework at the table when the red light came in. She swore that she grabbed both me and my cousin and hid in the corner, holding on until it faded completely. She remembers being certain that something was outside, though she never saw what it was. We've compared memories dozens of times now, and she insists that her story is true. I'm just as sure about mine. My cousin, however, never really likes to talk about it, and when he does, it's short and very uneasy. He says the light had weight to it, that it pressed down on him, but he kind of clams up after that. He never told us which version that he remembers, or if he remembers something different entirely. As the years pass on, the event never really leaves us. Sometimes we'll laugh about it, saying we were abducted, came back with different memories, but when I mention it now, my mom will still tense up. She hates red light too, can't stand it. If I use red light therapy or even a red night lamp, she gets anxious, will tell me to turn it off. A few years ago, I actually stumbled across a local article online about people seeing these strange lights in that same area around the same time. Some would claim it's a UFO sighting, and we ended up moving away long before, but reading that still made my stomach drop. Now personally, I never saw a craft, I never saw any figures, never even heard a sound. All I know is that time felt thin, the air felt heavy, and the world went red. Strangest experience of my life for sure. I still wonder what happened that day, and I guess I'll never really understand it completely. Something that brushed against us for a second then slipped away, leaving only a partial memory in its wake. I used to live in a suburban neighborhood inside Tennessee. When you grow up in a place like this, you learn early that the forests aren't for playing. The woods just don't play in the South. My sister and I were strictly told to never go in the forest alone. I moved away when I was 8, and this happened right around that time. My friend had come over for a play date. We were hanging out in my backyard. Now, the yard is kind of strange. It sloped down sharply and ended right at the edge of the huge forest. That mattered because once you go down the hill, you couldn't really hear anybody on the deck unless they were yelling. There was this open tree line that led to a narrow trail winding deep into the woods. being young and dumb, we thought it'd be fun to explore it. I didn't feel like running all the way back up the hill to tell my parents where we were going, so I didn't. We just kind of went. At first, everything was fine. We played around, threw some sticks, had some laughs, but when we started heading back towards my house, I heard something. Footsteps or branches snapping nearby. It felt like danger. I got this heavy feeling in my stomach like something or someone was watching us. My friend didn't say anything, but she didn't argue when I said that we should hurry back. Just as we reached the edge of the forest, I hear my mom's voice. She was calling for me somewhere off in the trees, saying that she was hurt, needed my help. That froze me. It was definitely her voice, same tone, same southern end. It just didn't make any sense. That danger feeling grew and grew. My head was telling me, go help her, but my gut was screaming to run. I took a few steps toward the voice before my friend grabbed my arm, and in that moment, the quote-unquote spell broke. My heart slammed into my chest, and my friend was pointing back up toward the deck. When I looked up, there was my mother, standing there waving, holding out popsicles. I could barely hear her calling out to us, but my friend had seen her walk outside. So we bolted up the hill as fast as we could. When we reached the porch, I asked my mom if she'd been in the woods. She frowned and said no. She'd been napping inside, woke up with this weird feeling that she needed to check on us. I never told her about the voice in the trees. I think she already knew that something was wrong, and I didn't really want to worry her anymore. That night after she tucked me in, I remember lying there in bed, staring out the window toward that same tree line. The moonlight was soft enough that I could see the shapes of the woods, the black outlines of branches shifting off in the wind. At first, all very normal. But then something else moved. A darker shape slid between the trees, almost like liquid. It paused, then turned as if it knew I was watching it. I ducked under the covers, trying to convince myself it's just my imagination. And after that, I stopped sleeping with the blinds open. Even during the day, the woods around me would make me uneasy. Sometimes I'd catch flashes of something pale moving between the trees or hear what sounded like breathing outside my window. A few weeks later, before we moved, my mom mentioned finding these claw marks on the back door. Thin, deep scratches just below the handle, like somebody had been testing how to get inside. She said it was probably raccoons. Fair warning to anybody visiting, stay out of the woods. I know the locals know exactly what I'm talking about. When I was in 5th or 6th grade, I learned what it meant to be alone in a house that suddenly didn't really feel like ours. I'm gonna be honest, I don't tell this story very much. My little sister Kinsley and I both came down with chickenpox that week. We were blotched, itchy, half mad from trying not to scratch anything. Kinsley made sure that we stuck together, pressing her face against mine, making me play dolls and tag even when she was burning up. A day later, I was covered head to toe. She was thrilled. Mom was too. She said it'd be easier if we both just kind of got it out of the way at the same time. My mom did what most moms did there in the 90s. Oatmeal baths, calamine lotion, lukewarm ginger ale, along with some VHS tapes stacked on the coffee table. She had to work, same as Dad, and our timing really couldn't have been worse. My dad would leave before dawn. My mom hung on long enough to make us some toast, measure the antihistamine, and tape the emergency numbers to the fridge. She kissed Kinsley on the forehead, looked at me and said, "You're old enough to keep an eye on things." I believed her. 11 felt old, ancient. I was a man. By God, I had just been put in charge too, for real this time, and for the first time in my life. Sure, watching the house here and there for 30 minutes, no big deal, but getting to run the whole show all day with my sister to boot, it felt like I was just elected president. The house was quiet after she left, the heater ticking, pipes knocking, and the fridge giving its low moan every few minutes. Normal house sounds, safe and familiar to my ears. Kinsley and I built a fort out of blankets, watched cartoons until noon. We called it Fort Chickipaki. Crawling around inside the blankets and fabrics was a good way to itch our skin too, without actually scratching with our fingernails. We fought about which tape to play next, and she ended up picking Ferngully. I booed for a straight 5 minutes. The itching would come in waves, sharp little reminders that we were diseased but free. I liked it though, being out of school, having the house to ourselves. But I caved in, watched the movie anyway with her. Every now and again, I caught her reflections in the dark TV screen, 2 little speckled goblins, half-dressed and scabbed up, laughing and just making it through. It felt like a small vacation, just with a few rules. Stay put, don't scratch, answer the phone if it's mom, and of course, lock the door. I remember how proud I actually felt locking the front door. By mid-morning, the light through the curtains had turned gold. The air in the house smelled like oatmeal and rubbing alcohol. Kinsley was humming to herself on the couch, tapping her legs, restless already. I thought the day would drag on like any other sick day, long, boring, and harmless. I didn't know the house could actually change sides though, and I didn't know family could too. The morning felt normal. Mom called around 9 to check in. I told her we were fine. She said that she'd grab some soup on lunch break, maybe even come home early. I told her not to worry. Big man words. Kinsley still sat there glued to the TV while I ended up taking a shower. My skin burned from the soap, but at least it quieted the itching a little bit. The water beat on the tile, steady and safe, and when I shut it off, the house was dead silent around me. I called out but didn't get an answer. I got dressed and walked into the hallway, and that's when I saw her leaning over the couch, face pressed up against the window. "What are you doing?" I asked her. She didn't move. "Uncle Dwayne's here." It caught me off guard. Dad's brother, always half drunk, sometimes mean and always unpredictable. I came to her side and looked for myself. His old truck sat at an angle in the driveway. Dwayne stomped through the yard in his denim jacket, pulling in boxes near the garage. He lifted a gas can, a bundle of cords, and tossed him into the truck bed. "It looks like he's just borrowing something," I said. I watched him wander, searching for whatever it might be. Sometimes he came to borrow tools or materials, whatever, so I really thought that's just what this was, one of those visits. And then he turned toward the house. "Duck," I whispered, and we dropped behind the couch. His boots then crunched their way toward the house, and the porch steps creaked. The screen door opened, then the deadbolt clicked. He had a key though. The front door closed behind him, and the sound was soft but final. I grabbed Kinsley's hand and whispered that we needed to go upstairs. We moved fast, skipping every noisy step into her room, and I locked that flimsy knob. Downstairs, it was silence again. The fridge door opened, a hiss of a beer can. He was inside, comfortable, like he was right at home. Kinsley trembled next to me. "Why is he here?" I didn't know. I crouched by the floor vent and just continued to listen. I heard him move through the living room, grabbing tapes, shoving things into a grocery sack. He wasn't looking for tools, he was just straight up taking stuff for himself. I mouthed that he was stealing. We waited and the TV came on. Then another can cracked open. He was settling in. I wanted to just wait it out, but time stretched and we were itchy. Finally, the TV went quiet. No footsteps, just the hum of the fridge. I whispered at Kinsley to stay here, and I slipped out, but Kinsley followed anyway. The house now smelled like beer and sweat. I stepped around this overturned chair, heart pounding so loud that I could feel it in my teeth. The kitchen in front of me was wrecked, drawers open, fridge ransacked. The living room was too, but no Uncle Dwayne. Then I heard a low laugh from down the hall in my parents' room. I crept forward and peeked around the doorframe. He stood by my mom's dresser, a hand buried in her underwear drawer. He lifted a pair and sniffed them, pocketed them, and chuckled again. I gasped out loud and it gave myself away. He spun around, eyes red and wet. "The hell are you doing here?" And for a second, we just stared at one another. And then he came for us. The beer can flew first, hitting the door and bursting. Foam sprayed across the carpet. "Come here, you little freaks." I pulled Kinsley down the hall. He followed, crashing into walls, knocking down pictures. "You spying on me?" We tore through the kitchen, socks slipping on linoleum. He grabbed at my shirt. missed only by inches. His breath hit me from the back of my neck, sour and rank. Uncle Dwayne always had really bad teeth, and I could smell the rot as he continued to chase me. I told Kinsley to run, and we cut through the dining room, looped around the table, and sprinted for the stairs, but he was too fast. I yanked Kinsley toward the back door instead. He slammed into the counter behind us, shouting, "I'll kill you!" The back door stuck. I twisted the lock and threw my shoulder into it. It burst open and cool morning air washed over us. We flew off the porch and down into the yard, and I heard him hit the door frame behind us, turning it into splinter on impact. I remember thinking I was being chased by a zombie. We sprinted for the fence. Ground tore underneath my feet. My hands hit the top board and we slipped. He was right behind me, shouting nothing but threats and curses. I pushed Kinsley up and over, and she stumbled and tumbled to the other side. I swung a leg up, and his hand caught my ankle. I yelled at him to let go, kicked, wild and desperately. My heel ended up hitting something soft. He grunted and then fell back. I rolled over the fence and hit dirt. The world went quiet except for Kinsley sobbing. Then a voice behind us. "Hey, what's going on over there?" Mr. Ellison, our next door neighbor. He was in his yard holding up a rake. "Help!" I shouted to him. "He's in our house." Dwayne came around the side of the fence on the road, staggering, red-faced, veins sticking out like pipework. Mr. Ellison dropped the rake and stepped forward. "You better get the hell out of here, Dwayne. I'm calling the cops." For a second, nobody moved. Then Dwayne started yelling again, throwing things, rocks, a plastic chair, anything he could get his hands on. "Go inside, kids," Mr. Ellison said. "Now." He turned back to Dwayne. "I got a gun." That did stop him. For a moment, he just stood there and glared, chest heaving. Then he spat on the grass and growled, "Tell my brother I came back for my money." He stomped over to his truck, slammed the door, and peeled away. I stood there shaking, lungs screaming. My arm still itched. My skin was crawling under the scabs. Kinsley clung to me, crying hard enough to hiccup. When I looked down at us, we were dirty, covered in chickenpox, and it honestly made me cry too. Mr. Ellison called the police from his porch, and I could still smell Dwayne in the air. Beer, motor oil, and just gross decay. I looked back at the house. The open door swung in the wind, slow and tired. There would be no fixing it, that was obvious. I remember looking at it and being scared of what my dad would say, even though I didn't do it. Still, they put me in charge, and from where I was standing, I'd failed. That was the first time that I understood that adults, that people, were the real monsters. The rest of that afternoon is still pretty blurry, but some parts burned clear as fire. The police came, Mr. Ellison had them on the phone before Dwayne even cleared the street. 2 cruisers showed up, sirens off, lights off. It made me think that they didn't even believe this was important. One cop took Kinsley and me onto a porch, while the other went inside with his hands on his gun. The house was destroyed, beer cans everywhere, drawers dumped, couch cushions gutted. My mom's dresser was overturned. It smelled like stale cigarettes and sweat. And I remember the cop shining his flashlight on the floor, licking his tongue and saying, "Jesus Christ." "All right, kids, how long was he inside for?" the other officer asked. "I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, I responded. My mom got there maybe 40 minutes later, hair standing on end, still in her work uniform. Dad wasn't far behind. They ran straight to us. Mom hugged us so hard that it hurt, and Kinsley finally broke down for real this time, like ugly sobs. I remember my mom whispering that, "You're okay, baby, you're okay." I told them about everything, and so did Kinsley, through hiccups and tears. The words would come out in bursts. The shower, the truck, the beer, the screaming. Dad didn't say a thing until the cop asked if he wanted to press charges against his brother. Then his jaw locked up. The next few days kind of just dragged on. The police would come back twice. One took fingerprints off the dresser and the kitchen counter. Another asked us to tell them the story again and again. Each time it felt more distant, like it happened to somebody else. They found Dwayne's truck 2 towns over that night, parked behind a bar. He was passed out inside, still half drunk and half coherent. He spent a week in jail, got probation, and then had to go to some kind of counseling, nothing serious. And after that, we never saw him again. My mom changed the locks the same week. Dad put motion lights up on the porch and put up this heavy-duty security door. They argued in whispers every single night. And one time I heard Dad say that, "I told you he'd snap one day." My mom just cried. Kinsley wouldn't sleep alone for a month. Every creak would make her jump. I tried to act tough, but I'd wake up sweating myself, convinced that I heard his shoes or boots on the stairs again. I'd walk the hall at night, stare out that same window where she'd first seen him. And sometimes I'd imagine his truck parked there once more, tailgate down, his shadow moving amongst the trees. Now, Dwayne never came back, but that feeling never left. Even years later, when I was old enough to understand addiction and anger and how men like Dwayne rot from the inside out, I still can't shake what it felt like. The sound of him crossing our porch, the clicking of the door, the moment our house stopped being ours. It's funny how quick safety really will disappear. One second you're a kid in pajamas, eating toast and watching cartoons. The next, you're crouched behind a couch, realizing that the world cares little for you. In fact, it might not even know you exist at all. My mom mentioned to me once that Dwayne had moved out of state, somewhere near the border. She said he sobered up and he called to apologize years later, but she didn't put him on speaker and we never spoke. I don't know if it would have helped anything anyway. I'm 40-something now, married, 2 kids of my own, and I still double check the locks every night, still keep a bat behind the bedroom door, and I tell my kids not to open up the door for anybody, not even family. They think I'm paranoid, and maybe I am.